Continues all day here on CBC News Networks. Cuba bearing the brunt of Hurricane Irma right now. We'll have the latest from Cuba, just 160 kilometers off the Florida coast.
Do not wait.
Tomorrow, millions have been ordered to leave, but many are staying to ride it out. The window for escape in Florida.
Entire state is expected to cause major and life-threatening impacts from coast to coast.
Irma is weakened to a Category 3 storm right now, but it is expected to pick up energy as it crosses the Florida Straits from Cuba, making landfall early tomorrow. It's estimated that about 7 million Floridians are in the path of this monster storm. People are on the move in Florida, getting out of Irma's way. In Miami, Fort Lauderdale, long lines forming at many shelters as some 23,000 people are seeking a safe place to hide to ride out this storm. The city opened 43 shelters. We're hearing that 7 are at capacity, but some people are saying that the capacity is still there for others to come, that it's just the long lines that are giving the impression that shelters are closed. People are preparing for the storm in other ways. Let's bring in Neil Herland, who's tracking developments for us. Neil.
Carol, I want to give you some very important numbers. There's about 22 million people who are in the state of Florida. 7 million of them are now under evacuation order. That means that 1/3 of the population of the entire state is in the crosshairs of this storm. The governor of Texas, Rick Scott, has been speaking all morning and all afternoon long with people in Florida, urging people who are in the most affected areas to get out while they still can. We are seeing fuel shortages in Florida. We're seeing food shortages in some areas. The ports in Florida are now closed to oil tankers, which means that fuel is only coming in on trucks, and some of those trucks will stop delivering fuel very shortly as the storm starts to arrive. So the message is very clear. Here is the governor of Florida.
I urge everyone to check on your neighbors, families, and friends. If you know someone who is not evacuating and should, please contact them and make sure they have a plan to get to safety. But you can't wait to get out. You can't wait until the storm's here. You've got to do it now. Possessions can be replaced. Your house can be replaced. You and your family cannot be replaced.
So there are about 320 shelters across the state. They're located in almost every county. The governor of Florida says there is still room. So if you have friends or relatives who have stayed behind who are in Florida, they should head to a shelter now if they are in one of the affected areas. I also want to mention the Attorney General of Florida has issued a warning to merchants not to engage in price gouging. There is an emergency hotline that has been set up to notify the state if anyone sees water, food, or fuel that might be overpriced. Price gouging is not allowed in the state, and the government intends to prosecute and fine people who engage in price gouging. Carol.
There's also concern about the animals, people stepping up to help with animal evacuations in the state, including a Canadian vet.
Yeah, we're hearing an incredible story of a Canadian veterinarian. His name is Christopher McLaughlin. He's from Woodstock, New Brunswick. He lives in Coral Springs, Florida at the animal hospital. He is taking care now of 300 animals that were left behind by the owners. Also, the Florida Zoo is moving some of its animals. We've got some pictures of these flamingos that are being moved. Let's bring up the pictures of these flamingos. There's about 150 animals at the zoo. 30% of these animals are being moved to more protective areas to make sure that they're not hurt in the storm. Some people have wondered why the zoo decided to move some of the animals, but the zoo says that some animals, it's better to keep them protected than to leave them out in the natural habitat. Carol?
Neil, thank you so much. All right, breaking news from the Netherlands. We are hearing from Dutch officials now. Irma has damaged or destroyed 70% of Saint Martin homes, and they say this leaves the island vulnerable to Jose's approach. So an official tallying of the damage in the Dutch island of Saint Martin. Irma damaged or destroyed 70% of the homes in Saint Martin, and they're worried about what's going to happen when Jose, which is a Category 4 storm, moves in shortly. Anyone still in this monster's path is urged to get out and get out now. Irma closing in by the hour. The CBC's Susan Ormiston is in Florida's East Coast, where the winds are already picking up and having an impact.
We're in Miami Beach in the middle of high winds here, but nothing epic. Hurricane Irma is on its way, but not here yet. But already, look at the type of damage that's being caused. This great big palm tree toppled over in these winds. Yesterday when we were out here, we saw the supports for the trunks of these trees and wondered how sturdy they could be in the face of hurricane winds. And in fact, even with low winds, relatively speaking, these roots have been upturned on this boulevard and the whole thing has collapsed. So you can only imagine when the storm is actually hitting this part of South Florida, what's going to happen to these trees. This is under an evacuation order. Most people have left, but we still see a few people wandering around. Mostly, though, it's a ghost town on Saturday morning. Susan Ormiston, CBC News in Miami Beach, Florida.
Hurricane Irma cut a swath of destruction in the Caribbean, including in the Virgin Islands. The British and American territories ravaged by the storm late Wednesday, looking at over $1 billion of damage. This aerial view offers a glimpse of the magnitude of that damage. At least 4 people are confirmed dead and 23, possibly as high as 25 overall in the Caribbean. And as I just told you before, 70% of the homes in Saint Martin damaged or destroyed. Let me show you the island of Barbuda, part of the Caribbean nation, Antigua and Barbuda, almost entirely wiped out by Irma. 9 out of every 10 buildings was damaged. Earlier, we spoke to freelance reporter Anika Kentish about the situation in Barbuda and about the effort to get victims off the island.
They were able to get upwards of 1,400 people out of Barbuda over a 48-hour period. Planes were brought in from Venezuela, a ferry from Montserrat, and the local fishermen also brought their boats out to get the job done. Now, they're all here in Antigua. Some are at various shelters. A lot of them are actually housed in people's homes. So right now, there's just a kind of there's a temporary sense of relief, but then there's still an overall sense of hopelessness, because either way you look at it, you're going to have to face the music at some point that the Barbudans will have to rebuild. And it's not just about just the Barbudans rebuilding, it's a national effort. And so people are going to be coming out, I'm sure, in large numbers to make sure that we can rebuild Barbuda even better than it was before.
Freelance reporter Anika Kentish speaking to us earlier from St. John's, the capital of Antigua and Barbuda. The Weather Network's Kelly Sonnenberg is monitoring the paths of both Irma and Jose, and she joins me now live. Kelly, where are the storms now? I want to ask you another question as well. And, we're hearing some word of the Bahamas that Nassau is breathing a big sigh of relief today. So tell us about the storms, and if you have any information about the Bahamas, tell us that as well.
Well, right now, as we take a look at the storms right now, you can see Irma, the outer bands of it. It is just a massive storm. We're dealing with significant strong winds, rain, thunderstorms, tornadoes. That is going to be moving through the Bahamas right now. I want to quickly talk about Jose first, because it is a strong Category 4 right now. Wind speeds at about 233 kilometers an hour. It's not expected to make direct landfall on any of the Virgin Islands, but there are hurricane warnings in effect for Saint Martin, St. Bart's, as well, as the storm continues to take more of a northwest track. Now back to Hurricane Irma, again a Category 3, but a strong Category 3, still tracking along the northern edge of Cuba right now, brought catastrophic damage to Cuba. We're keeping an eye on this little wobble that's going on with the eye. Is this the beginning of the northward turn, or is this just a little wobble in the track? Something we're going to keep an eye on the next 12 to 24 hours. Nonetheless, models are still suggesting it's going to take a northward track up the west coast of Florida, landfall through the Keys, then into anywhere between Naples and Tampa as a Category 4 hurricane. Starting to see those rain bands bring in rain. Also, tornado watches and warnings have been in effect.
This is a live look at Key West. Hurricane Irma continues to get closer to Florida. As Kelly was just saying, the outer bands are having an effect right now. It's expected to hit the state overnight into the morning. Right now, Irma is a Category 3 storm. Once it leaves Cuba and hits open water, it is expected, hits open warm water, that's key. It's expected to gain strength. The water's there about 30 degrees. We'll continue our coverage of Irma and Hurricane Jose all weekend here on CBC News Network. Stay with us.